My name is DJ at Large and welcome to our webinar. I will be your host this afternoon. And like I said, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We appreciate you. And over the last couple of weeks, Asisa Foundation has done a great job of helping us to build a relationship with our money through the L Plus Earn Consumer Financial Education Program, our hashtag across social media and the chat box is hashtag secure the bag. And today is the 6th and final webinar. I'm a bit sad. I'm heartbroken. I'm cut between heart and stomach, but it's okay. So today's webinar is our last one and it's all about work readiness. Please drop me a message in the chat box at the bottom. Let me know where are you currently watching from. And of course, the hashtag is secure the bag. So let me see what's happening in terms of our chat. I see the numbers are coming up. So people are entering the room. As I said, the hashtag is secure the bag. Let me read a couple of your messages. Let me see. Gerelina says, I'm all the way in TUT enjoying the webinar. Hashtag secure the bag. Saki says, hashtag secure the bag. Another webinar, sad that it's coming to an end. And Saki is watching all the way from the Val. Like it, like it, like it. Noel has also joined us as well. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Pride says, I'm out in UL, currently watching the webinar and enjoying it. Connie says, I'm out, where is it? I lost Connie's message, oh no. Katleko says, I'm out in Wonder Park. So lots and lots of messages. That's how you interact with me in the chat box, right? So much to look forward to today in terms of today's webinar. It's all about work readiness. And as per normal, remember to visit the L Plus Earn website, which is www.lplusearn.org.za for access to some great financial resources, such as the recordings of our previous webinars. Today's webinar will be available on the platform next week, Wednesday. And if you have any issues, any concerns, please send an email to sarah@groundedmedia.co.za. So talking about last week's webinar, I would like to announce our 9 winners from last week. So we're about to make people very, very happy. So in terms of our top 3 winners for chats and comments, these are our 3 winners: Tabang Madisa, Simpiwo Gesha, and Augustinus Makele. Shout out to you guys for winning. Our top 3 winners for top session engagement. This one goes to Tshepiso Ramotsehoa, Tumelo Tsebene, and Panashe Yvette Dube. Shout out to them. And our top 3 winners for pre and post surveys is Ayoluva Akbola, Augusta Matsimela, and Kwanele Shabalala. A big shout out to our 9 winners from last week. And if you would like to win this week, engage in the chat box, ask questions in the Q&A tab at the bottom, comment, participate in the polls, and remember to register on the Zlato platform and submit your creative 3-minute video about what you've learned over the last 6 weeks. The video could be a song, it could be a poem, a rap, a dialogue, and you could win yourself 280 Zlato. Woo-wee! So as I mentioned earlier on, today is our final webinar. Feeling a little bit sad and heartbroken, and we will be covering work readiness. So for those that attended at least 4 of the last 6 webinars, they will be receiving certificates of participation. So for those that have attended at least 4 out of the 6 webinars, you will be receiving a certificate of participation because you've worked hard, you've tried your best, and we appreciate that. So far we've covered budgeting, saving, investing, entrepreneurship, and managing credit. Remember to visit the L Plus Earn website. If you've missed any of the previous webinars, the recordings are there. So in terms of today's webinar, we will be joined by 2 very special guests. Let me give them a quick virtual high five. A big shout out to Thabiso and Tshepiso. Let me unshare so I can see their beautiful faces. Where are they? Thabiso, Tshepiso, where are you guys? Yes, beautiful face, Thabiso. Hey, where's Thabiso? Where's Thabiso? I'm not seeing that, brother. Where is he? You know, these load shedding things can be problematic, very, very problematic. But I know he's somewhere here. He's here in spirit in the meantime.
Can't you see me?
Ah, there you are. Yes. I now see Tshepiso. I now see Thabiso. Guys, please give me a virtual high five in 3, 2, 1. Hey, virtual high five. So these are two special guests who will be joining us later on in the webinar. They've got great insights into work readiness, right? So they'll be sharing all of their expertise. And as per normal, I've got a random money question before we start talking about work readiness. This is my question. I want to know from you guys, right, in the chat box, what's your current relationship status with your money? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it critical but stable? What's your current relationship status with your money? So go into the chat box at the bottom, let me know, use the hashtag secure the bag. So the reason I ask is that 5 weeks ago, when we started this journey, I asked you guys what song best describes your relationship status with money, and it didn't look good. So I'm hoping that 5 weeks later, your relationship with money has improved, and from being critical to stable to thriving. That's what I'm hoping. So I want to know from you guys, what's your current relationship status with your money? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it critical? Is it stable? Let's see what's happening in terms of the chat. Let's see. I see somebody here saying not divorced. I want to see who this person is. Who's this saying not divorced? Okay, cool. Kensani says, good, we're happily married. I love that. Augusta says, it's still a little bit complicated, it's still a little bit shaky. I understand, it's okay, it can't be perfect all the time. Asipa says, it's good since I'm saving my money and putting all the wonderful emojis. Karabo saying, shout out to all the guests, looking excited to learning from them. Lesejo says, hashtag secure the bag. It's critical, but it's currently stable. So a mix of that. So keep sharing all your messages. What's your current relationship status with your money? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it critical? Or perhaps it's a little bit stable, or it is thriving. So as I mentioned earlier on, today's webinar is all about work readiness. So from preparing a CV to getting ready for the corporate hustle. So work readiness is all about planning and transitioning from university to the world of work. So, interacting with recruiters, with HR managers as you try to get a job. It's about adapting to a new schedule and applying all the theory that you learned in university in a practical work environment. It can be a lot, I admit, right? You will also have to learn and develop new skills. So from knowing how to manage your time by prioritizing tasks, dealing with team dynamics and pressure, all of a sudden somebody's eating your lunch in the fridge, how do you balance that type of stuff? Doing multiple tasks, networking, doing presentations. But what I've learned is with time, these skills will sharpen naturally, especially if you enter the world of work with a teachable spirit. In other words, you have a positive attitude. You have a willingness to learn, to ask, to research, to want to improve yourself, right? So having that teachable spirit is really, really important. And as you start preparing for the world of work, it's also important to sharpen and develop your personal brand and to start marketing yourself, right? So your personal brand is your appearance, right? So the way that you dress, the way that you carry yourself. It's your personality. So how you behave, how you communicate, the energy that you give off. It's about, your personal brand is about your abilities and your skills. So the things that you're able to do. It's about your uniqueness, right? So the thing that sets you apart from everyone else. And lastly, your personal brand is about your values. Who are you? What do you believe in? So your personal brand is personal to you. In other words, it can't be copied. It's unique, it's authentic, it's who you are, right? So you have to work on your personal branding. And then how do you market yourself? Another important step in your work readiness journey is preparing a CV that reflects who you are personally and professionally. So keep your CV short. We don't want an essay. We don't want a long story. Keep your CV short. Tailor it to the job that you want. So a really great tip is have a standard CV that you can easily customize, right? Add a cover letter if it's requested. Keep it clean, check for typos and errors. So ask a friend, ask somebody else to read it for you so that they can just double check that there's no typos or errors. Please tell the truth in your CV. Don't lie. Too many people lie in their CVs. Don't lie in your CV, right? Mention your qualifications, but you don't necessarily have to list every result. Now you're telling us what you got in biology, in science. No. You don't have to go into detail, right? And most importantly, make it look good. Make it look easy to read. So use your bullet points, your spacing. Aesthetically, it needs to look really, really nice, because you can imagine a recruiter or somebody in HR, they see a lot of CVs every day. So how do you make yours stand out, right? And if you do submit your CV for a job and it's successful, then they might shortlist you for an interview, right? And it's important that you spend some time preparing if you are called for an interview, right? This isn't a session with your friends at Konka. This is a serious thing, right? It's an opportunity to create a great impression and to hopefully land you a job, right? So prepare, do a little bit of some research on the company. Who is the company? Who is the CEO? What's this company all about? Is this company in the news, right? So do a little bit of some research. Even prepare some questions for the recruiters, for the HR, to show them a little bit of some initiative, right? Be on time, dress appropriately. Please, guys, no crop tops. And I know, guys, no. Dress appropriately and be on time, right? These small things, they really, really matter, right? And if you're doing the interview online, right, try and be in a quiet place with steady internet, charge your laptop. And I know that these things aren't possible for all of us because we don't all have the resources, but try your best to make an impression and to make an effort. Also, don't be arrogant and too jajara in the interview, right? If it's the first round of interviews, don't ask too many questions about salaries, about benefits just yet, right? Leave that for the follow-up interview, for the second interview. You want to show them that you're more about money, right? So there's more to you than just that. So those are just a few do's and don'ts, please. I've seen people wearing do-rags going to interviews. No, guys. Leave the spot at home. No, guys. Another thing that I'd like for you guys to be very cautious about is job scams, right? So, scammers know that as young people, we're desperate for jobs, right? So they're taking advantage of a lot of us. So please be careful. And here are a couple of tips, right? Don't pay money to secure an interview or pay for admin or credit checks. None of those. That's a big red flag, right? And be cautious of recruiters that guarantee a job. Nobody can guarantee a job where they say you will definitely get it. Be a little bit cautious, right? That's another red flag. Another thing is don't give out unnecessary personal information. Now you're giving them your banking details. For what? It's not necessary, right? Give them information that is necessary to you getting the job. Your banking details is not one of them. And last but not least, check for the authenticity of the company and the job post. So you come across a job post on Facebook, do a little bit of some research, right? Go to the company website and see, is this job existing? Is it real? And if you're invited for the interview, check the address carefully, right? Is it in a shady area? Is it where the company is located? Where exactly is this address? Especially if the email you're receiving comes from like a Gmail account. Be a little bit cautious. Those are a couple of red flags to look out for in terms of these job scams. And when you do finally land the job, your CV, A1, interview, you killed it, and now you land the job, right? You need to start thinking about your salary, right? So please be aware that there will be deductions to your salary, right? And your pay slip will list what these deductions are, because these deductions will come off automatically, right? And this explains the difference between gross pay and net pay. You might have heard of this, gross pay and net pay. So gross is your salary or your pay before deductions. So if you see a job being advertised for, say, 15,000 Rand, they are referring to gross pay. So that's the salary before the deductions, right? Net pay is your salary after your deductions. And there's a number of deductions that you could see on your pay slip. There could be government deductions. So here we're talking about tax, we're talking about UIF. They could be compulsory deductions. So this could be your medical aid, your disability funds, your pension funds, your group benefits. And then there's voluntary deductions. So maybe you want to join a union. And so there's union subscriptions. And last but not least, there could be some contractual deductions. So that's where your employer has been asked to make a deduction from your salary before you receive it. And this is usually through a court order. So child maintenance is one example of this. A pro tip that I learned when I entered the world of work is go and talk to your HR and finance department about your deductions. If you don't understand them, and ask them, what is this for? What is this for? Don't be afraid to interact, to ask questions. You're new in this world of work, and that's what HR and the finance department is there for. Ask them these types of questions, right? Getting you ready for the world of work, for you to be a corporate hustler. Talk about corporate hustlers and people doing big things, young people specifically. We have our first youth interview. So please allow me to introduce Thabiso Ncube. Thabiso is a young professional who works as a financial advisor. Being an individual who studied environmental science, but having a teachable spirit and personality, he was able to adapt into the financial sector. And outside of his professional and academic background, he's been involved in numerous international organizations. From his early youth days, he was part of the Rotary, and then this progressed into him being the national president of ISAC in South Africa. And currently he is involved with the Global Shapers an initiative of the World Economic Forum. Thank you so much for joining us, Thabiso. It's lovely to have you. Are you good? Are you enjoying the webinar? I'm loving that you have this big, beautiful smile, brother.
No, I'm definitely enjoying the webinar. It actually brings me back to when I was younger, and I definitely needed this. I'm definitely enjoying it, and yeah, great information.
Yeah, I love that you've brought up when you were a little bit younger. I want us to rewind back to when you were in university. How were you preparing for the world of work? What were you doing?
I think it's one of those things where when you're in varsity, all you're thinking about is just having fun, but then you're forgetting after those 3 years, you're going to have to get into that work environment. And for me, I was fortunate enough to actually already be engaged with various community engagements. And I went to the SRC, I asked them, okay, what do you guys have available on campus? And then we took it from there. And that's how I then got to engage with the organization called ISAC. So for me, it was not just looking at my academic career back in varsity, but looking at what can I do outside of my academics? What sports are also available? So I guess that was me. Yeah.
I love the fact that you took initiative. You didn't just sit and say, cool, after lectures, we're just going to relax, we're going to take it easy. In fact, I want to learn, I want to do a little bit more. And in terms of the things that you learned and the skills that you gained, I'm very curious to know, what are some of these skills that you learned in addition to your academic qualifications that have now come in handy as you start in the world of work?
When you look at skills, it's always going to be one of those things where we need soft skills in this day and age. So take, for example, one of my biggest skills that I actually got to learn back in varsity was networking. Being involved in those various organizations, you get to engage with various other people around the world, around the country, and those networking skills are the ones which are going to actually aid you in the future. But outside of networking, you're looking at leadership development, and leadership development covers a whole array of topics. But then essentially it's communication skills, strategic planning, project management, facilitation. So it's various skills that you actually get to learn, and it's things that you definitely need in the working environment.
Yeah, and I think it also gives you that opportunity to network with people in different industries. And it actually brings me into my next, question. How did your involvement in these leadership programs, in these extra programs that you were participating in, then benefit you?
I think one of my biggest take homes is in my second year of varsity, I applied to be a local president for the organization I was part of, but then come voting time or come elections, I choked. I could not speak at all. I literally choked. And then after that, I was like, this is a skill that I definitely need to learn. And after that, I put myself in situations where I needed to speak in front of people, be it in the organization that I was part of, or be it just in class or the likes. And it just made me a more confident person. And I think for me, confidence is one of the key skills that people actually need to get whenever they walk into the work environment. So for me, it was building that confidence within myself and understanding that I am who I am and I will stand for what I stand for.
What you're saying is so interesting. You're taking me back to university. So a lot of people are asking me, where do you get this confidence to do webinars and you're so energetic? One of the things I did when I was at Wits is I did drama. So I acted. And I was doing an LLB, I was doing law, but I did a little bit of drama, and that's where that skill of being able to speak comes from. So what you're saying is really important, that when you participate in these programs, you learn all these other skills that you will then benefit from at a later stage, and confidence and the ability to speak is such an important one. Even the ability to network with people, I think, makes sense. One of the things, Thabiso, you mentioned that was really important is you took the initiative to go out and to find where these programs are. And one of the things that you did was you went to the SRC. What else can some of our attendees, our learners that are in university, what else can they do to find these types of opportunities?
We live in a technological world, and thankfully we have internet. You just go Google, Dr. Google, and just ask, okay, guys, what youth-led organizations are there available? And the reason why I specifically say youth-led is because youth are definitely the leaders of tomorrow, and the organizations that we currently lead are the ones which are actually making the change right now. So look for specifically youth-led organizations, and that is where you get to meet like-minded kids, like-minded people who are there to actually build you as a person as well and build your dreams. So I think it's also a space where you're allowed to fail. That's something which we have not been allowed in the working environment. But then whilst you're still in varsity, go to Google, look for those youth-led organizations and join them. Outside of that, join sports. I think for me, being a sports person, you get to learn that teamwork from that unity you get within sports. So not to just say, okay, no, it's just soccer, but then it's you being active, your mental health helps. So being active and getting involved with various other people within those networks outside of the organizations, outside of academics, sports does definitely help.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. It's so important. I want to change tack a little bit and talk a bit about money management, right? So, what are some of the skills you had to learn very quickly in order to, adapt to now being an income earner? So, I'm really curious to know a bit about the money management aspect.
I think for me, the first thing that I got to learn is I come from a Black background, and African people, we have Black tax. That was the first thing that I needed to learn. And putting boundaries for Black tax is something that you need to learn. If you're not going to be able to put those boundaries, then you are always going to be the scapegoat where people are like, no, that person can't do that for us. And you're always just going to come through for them. But for me, it was putting those boundaries for Black tax. But then outside of that, on my day-to-day, whenever I'm doing the whole budgets and the likes, I work on a 70, 20, 10%. So 70% is pretty much spent on my living expenses, right? So that is looking into my rent, my food, fuel and the likes. And then 20% is looking into my savings. So savings is looking into my emergency fund as well as my family fund. So emergency fund is a fund that I'm building in case, something happens in the future, I can always tap into those funds. And then the other 10% is looking into long-term investments. So you have to look into your retirement annuities, you have to look into your various other things, donations and the likes. So for me, it's a 70, 20, 10. And based on that, and don't always look at it as numbers where you say you're earning 20,000, then I have to put in, 14,000. No, rather work on a percentage basis because it's always going to be easier. It's manageable to work on a percentage basis.
Yeah, I love that strategy of the 70, 20, 10 rule and following it out and then spreading your money according to doing it that way. Thabiso, I'm very curious to know what tips do you have for some of our attendees who are very young, who are still studying, they've got tutorials, they've got exams, they've got all these things happening. What advice do you have so that they're able to better transition into the world of work so that they can actually become an employee? And obviously that will be based out of some of your experiences.
I think one of the nice things that I heard you say was looking into values, whereby you need to have a value basis as an individual. You need to stand for something, because if you don't, you're definitely going to fall for something. And going forward into the work environment, people are going to push you over and the likes. However, I think for me, it's a situation of firstly, be confident. And also when you're in the working environment, you might have been the brightest young person in varsity, but when you get into your work environment, there's someone who's always going to be better than you. There's someone who's always going to be more efficient than you, but do not fear for who you are. Stand for what you believe in, and your contribution will always count. But outside of that, I think for me, two of the biggest things that I took away from my various organization career is that be ethical and be a very integral person. A person who has integrity and who is ethical is bound to actually go further. So definitely those two. And outside of that, like you mentioned, in terms of that first interview, don't ask about salary. And also within the working environment, know when to negotiate and know when to wait. Those two things go hand in hand. Don't always think just because you've been in the company for 12 months, I'm now ready to negotiate. Because a lot of companies will put more budget into recruiting someone than giving you higher salary. So it's those type of things that you need to learn when you enter into the working environment. But I think the most important tip is enter into an environment that promotes good energy, that promotes good vibes, let me put it that way, because essentially mental health is very essential in this day and age. If you are going to be coming back home at 10 o'clock or even at 12 a.m. and you don't even have time to sleep, you don't even look after yourself, it's very hard. So enter into a corporate that is aligned with what you believe in, with the good vibes, and definitely you will go far with them.
Thabiso, loving all your tips, so relatable. And thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your journey in terms of moving from university all the way to the world of work. Thabiso, please dive into the chat. There's so many comments specifically from you in terms of some of the things that people are learning from you. So please dive into the chat. In the meantime, I want to bring in another special lady, Tshepiso Ramotsehoa. And she's, of course, also an expert in this field in terms of work readiness. So, I'd like to bring Tshepiso into the conversation. She is a leadership coach and works at an academy as well, where she helps people to build confidence, but to also, take charge of your corporate hustle. So, her focus is on training employees to bring value to their work through growing, learning, and being game-changing professionals who remain globally competitive. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so you heard Thabiso. He said so much in terms of his journey as a young person. And I want to talk a bit about employers and skills that they're looking for. So as a young person, what are some of the skills that I need to be adding to my academics so that are more attractive in terms of, entering the world of work?
I think it's very easy to, have a academic focus when you are at university, and something that is really important is to sort of broaden your interests a bit and look for opportunities to showcase your leadership skill, to showcase some of your interests. And volunteering is something that is very underrated. But can really, bolster your CV in a beautiful way.
I think the volunteering one is such an interesting thing. So once upon a time, I used to work on a commercial radio station called YFM. And I got to YFM because I was volunteering on my campus radio station. Wasn't getting paid. I was on there in the middle of the night. I don't know if there was 2 people listening or not, but because I loved the space and I was volunteering, it got me into a better place, a better vibe, in other words. So I think the idea of volunteering is very important, because sometimes we think, but we're not earning anything. So I love that you brought that up so that you can start to learn some of these skills. Another thing that I've been thinking about is, how can we acquire some of these skills while we're studying? Because sometimes I think students struggle with finding that balance. So what can they do to try and find the right balance?
I think it's just about being realistic and really managing your time well, and looking at your interests, doing something that is aligned, that you actually care about, because then it becomes easier for you to make the necessary sacrifices in terms of time to invest. So maybe you are interested in mentoring. Maybe you can go back to your old high school and you can support the grade 11s, because you remember how difficult it was for you when you were in grade 11, or supporting the matrics. So I think those are the kinds of things that we can really start looking at, that maybe are not too far out for us in terms of our comfort zone. I used to do promotions. So I was the girl that was handing out free samples of shampoo at Pick and Pay and samples of Aquafresh at the taxi rank. on weekends because I just needed to, really focus on my academics during the week. But weekends, that's when I started looking at potential opportunities for me to be able to get a little bit of work experience where I could.
Oh, absolutely love that. I know how some of our attendees think, how young people think. And I know that there's somebody thinking right now, how do I sell myself? I'm unknown. I don't have any experience. How do I build and package my brand for my CV or my online, brand? How do I become marketable? How do I stand out?
I think, the most important thing, as you mentioned, online, I think as young people, we don't really look at social media sometimes in the right perspective. And you already have a brand. You have a brand right now. And if you go onto your social media and you look at how you're posting and how you're presenting yourself, that could potentially be the brand that is already out there. And, potential recruiters nowadays will Google, you before you even walk through the door. So Google yourself and see what's out there and see is that what you want people to see, or to, is that the perception that you want people to have of you? A friend of mine who's in recruitment actually calls it the big purge, where people go and they delete posts or delete pictures that are not flattering, especially as you transition, in different seasons of your life. Certain things are acceptable, but as you get older, you might find that those things change. So what was maybe acceptable when you were in high school, as you now transition and you want to apply for grad programs, could potentially, stand in your way. So I think it's really important for us to be mindful how we use these platforms, and for us to be intentional and deliberate as we post. So even if you're going out and you're having fun with your friends, choosing the most appropriate pictures, is something that is really important. And, put together a LinkedIn profile and put your interests on there, share your achievements, share your accolades and the things that you're doing, because then it becomes easier. If somebody is sitting with your CV and it's just one page and it has your LinkedIn, link or your name, it becomes easier for me to sort of have an idea of who you are and your personality type, if you, have those kinds of platforms available for people to have a look at.
I love that you touched on LinkedIn, because I actually wanted to go there. You've answered my question about making the use of these types of platforms. But as you were speaking, I also realized that as a young person, you need a little bit strategic, right? Certain platforms are for certain things. LinkedIn is a professional platform. You're not posting pictures at the club. You're having no, it's not for that. So different platforms are for different things, right? And then also be smart in terms of who you're following. If you're interested in a certain company, follow the company, follow the CEO, follow the HR manager. So it's about, using the right platform for the right thing. And, you answered it in terms of some of the tips that you have given. And another thing, Thabiso, that I was thinking about is, if you get an opportunity to get an internship or a graduate development program, there's quite a few, how do you make the most of such an opportunity? Because, usually it's like 30 of us or 20 of us. So how do I make the most of that opportunity? And how do I stand out so that at the end of this opportunity, I might potentially get a job out of it?
I think it's very important to have a plan and to be intentional. So, with the graduates that I coach, I always ask them, where does this opportunity fit in the big picture? Why is this opportunity significant? And what does success at the end of this graduate program or this internship look like? Because if you have an idea of what you're trying to create or what you're trying to achieve in that opportunity, it becomes easier for you to be intentional and to be deliberate. So for example, it seems like such a small thing, but being punctual, being on time, getting to work early is something that really showcases that you take yourself seriously, you take this opportunity seriously, and not just looking at, the people that work here, bona ba fihla ka 10 or ba fihla ka 11. For you, this is the very beginning of your career and you really putting together your professional brand. So you should not go along with what everybody else is doing, because maybe they have tenure, they've been in that organization for a long, time, and their professional brand is significantly higher. So they have certain perks that you might not have as you are beginning and starting your career. So really looking at the small things, that they seem small, but they have such a massive impact in terms of your professional brand, how you communicate your brand, and how you're showing up. So if you were running yourself, you know, what does the Tshepiso Ramotsehoa brand represent? What value does it add? If I was running myself like a business, what is my, you know, product? And how can I consistently deliver a really good quality product? Because essentially that's what people are gonna want more of. And at the end of the program, that's when people are gonna say, actually, that girl, Tshepiso, there's something about her. She's helpful, she's punctual, she communicates really well. And I think that, you know, she's somebody that we can invest more in.
Ah, absolutely love that. Now, you know, one of the sad realities of where we are at the moment is you could be a student, you graduate, and you follow everything that we've said. You have a great CV, you do really well in the interview, but you don't land the job. What then? What do we say to some of our unemployed graduates that are doing everything right, but they're not landing the job? What advice do we have to them?
I think it's really about checking in, because obviously it's something that is very difficult when you feel like you've done everything right. You're showing up, you're submitting your CV, but nothing's landing. I think the most important thing is to just keep going, keep that momentum, because, you know, you just moving forward and putting one foot in front of another is better than just sitting on the couch at home and just, you know, like Thabiso was talking about mental health. That's something that will significantly impact your mental health. And I have an example of a grad who went to UP, studied finance, and because he was always a high performer, the expectation was that he was going to land a grad program at one of the banks, and that it was a sure thing because he went to a good school, he went to a good university, so obviously he's going to get an opportunity. So he applies, you know, to all of the banks for their grad programs, and he didn't get selected. And it was his first encounter with rejection and perceived failure. And, you know, he had two choices. Either he was just going to sit on his mother's couch and go back to Mafikeng, or he was going to find something else. And he ended up working at a store in Mainland Shopping Center as a sales associate, something so far from his dreams of being an investment banker. But it was something that gave him purpose and gave him a reason to wake up every morning. And it gave him a reason to sharpen, you know, customer service and learn new skills that were completely different from what he thought he'd be doing. And as he was checking somebody out at the till, he went to university with this person, and they asked, what are you doing here? And he said, no, I'm applying for programs and for jobs, but I'm working while I wait. And they, you know, got his CV and sent it to Investec, and today he works at Investec. So you also never know where opportunities are gonna find you. You might, you know, be serving somebody at Wimpy who is the CEO or an HR manager, and purely on how you show up, how you present the menu, how you present their meal, you know, they see something in you and they start asking you questions. Where are you from? How did you get here? What did you study? And an opportunity might open up purely on that interaction because you showed up and you didn't give up and you really showcased your personality, your great customer service, your great attitude. So sometimes life will take you, you know, the long way, but eventually it's really just about keeping the faith and knowing that it's just about putting one foot in front of another. If you have to start being a merchandiser, go garaging down the road, and then you know, it's an opportunity that will open up the next door and the next door and the next door.
Tshepiso Ramotsehoa, this is why you are the experts. This is why you are here. Some great tips. Tshepiso, please dive into the chat. There's so many comments from people around some of the stuff that you've said. And of course, I will be bringing Tshepiso and Thabiso back into the conversation for our Q&A for any of your burning questions. Now, I want to talk to Tshepiso and Thabiso about the role of social media, because it's something that keeps coming up in the Q&A. What are the do's and don'ts of social media, particularly if I'm entering the world of work, I'm trying to get a job? Thabiso, can we perhaps start with you? What are the do's and don'ts, some things that you shouldn't be doing on social media if you're trying to land a job?
I think, you mentioned, personal brand and just how you're presenting yourself. Obviously, we know that you're young, you want to have fun, la groova, homonate, but, I think it's really about thinking about your future and thinking about how you're presenting yourself and what your personal brand actually looks like. And just being more mindful and being more intentional about what you're putting out there. So if you're somebody who is interested in, youth and, youth issues, and that's what you use your Twitter to sort of spark conversation and unpack what's going on in the country and share initiatives that are going on in your community, that's something that's amazing. So if you put that you really care about young people and youth in South Africa, when somebody Googles you and they go onto your Twitter, it's aligned, So I think it's really about looking at how you're putting yourself out there and not being mean to people online, arguing with people online, slandering people online, because then it makes people very nervous. Because if you can do that to one organization, then there is a potential that you will do it to mine as well.
That makes sense. Thabiso, there's actually a question here that I think you'd be brilliant for. Noah Ncube wants to know, as a student who has never worked before, what would I put in my CV that will make a company call me for an interview? Because Thabiso, you've been in this situation, but I sort of feel I know what your answer is going to be, but I'd love to hear from you, Thabiso.
You don't have any work experience. Are you still in the tertiary institution? If you still are, join an organization. Any organization will definitely help. It will set you apart. Like Tshepiso mentioned earlier on, volunteering is extremely essential because outside of getting the soft skills that you're getting from there, you're also building a network. So definitely join an organization and build yourself within that organization, gain various skills that you never had before. So definitely I would say join an organization. And if you can't join an organization, look at what your community currently needs and see how you can actually be a gap there. Because essentially we live in the most unequal society in the world, and we know we have so many socio-economic problems. So what type of person are you going to be in terms of bettering that community that you currently live in?
Yeah, I love what you've said. And it goes back to the stuff that you were doing, participating in various programs, looking at your community. Where could I fill a gap so that my CV looks a little bit more attractive? Thabiso, I want to bring you in. There's another really interesting question from Karabo who says, how can one build confidence for an interview since it's so nerve-wracking, right? So what do I do to build my confidence and better prepare for an interview?
This is going to sound so cheesy, but I used to prepare in front of the mirror because I wanted to see what I would look like in front of people, and just, enunciating and projecting, because you don't want to be timid. You don't want to, be too shy, even if it is actually your natural state. I am, naturally an introvert, but I knew that I couldn't use that as a crutch to not show up and showcase myself, because I knew that it would sort of stand in my way in terms of being able to access opportunities. And I think what Thabiso is talking about in terms of joining associations, that's where you can start practicing, where the stakes aren't so high, when you're at a job interview. Being able to speak to strangers is something that is important in any organization. And joining those associations with like-minded people with similar interests becomes an easy way for you to start practicing that competency, so that you can actually, because it's a muscle, you don't wake up one day and you have these tone-defined muscles. You need to practice and actually, put the work in. So, look for associations or community projects, exactly what Thabiso is saying, where you can engage with people from all walks of life, young people, old people, people that are similar to you, people that are completely different to you. And that's where you're really going to start building that muscle of being able to engage with people and not feel completely overwhelmed.
Makes sense. Thabiso, did the mirror also work for you as well?
Definitely, definitely. Because it's one of those things where you look at yourself and accept where you're wrong, accept where you also, because we all know what we're good at, we know where we are shortfalling, and it definitely does help build on those things. So definitely the mirror does help.
Yeah, So one last question, and it's around salaries, and it keeps coming up in the Q&A, and I'll just start with you, Thabiso, is can you negotiate your first salary?
So when I actually started working, I asked, what is the industry salary? And based from that, because one thing I know is whenever you go apply, they really show what the salary is. And then when you go into the interview, they ask you, so what are your salary expectations? I think for me, it would be answering that question in the sense of, okay, my salary expectations is industry, regulations. So in as much as you can think of, let's say a marketing would, let's say, get 20,000, and then when are you going to go in there and say, no, I want 15,000 because you feel as though 15,000 can actually, cover all your costs. But essentially it's a situation where you can actually get far much more. So rather keeping it and saying it industry wise, it would be a lot easier, but also looking into, so in terms of negotiating, when they ask you, okay, is 20,000 good enough for you? Also just find out with yourself, like, can I get back to you? You're allowed to actually ask those questions and ask them, okay, what else can actually be offered? Are there any other benefits? Because when you're looking at your salary, you're not just looking at, I'm getting 20,000. If you get additional benefit, those benefits actually amount to your salary because they are pretty much compensating for the things that you currently don't have. So definitely look into benefits, but also look at salary.
Thabiso, I see you nodding, and I want you to wrap it up for us in terms of negotiating that first salary. I think Thabiso was quite spot on, but I did see you nodding as well.
I definitely agree. I think, and having an idea of sort of the industry standard is something that's important, and sort of can make you feel a bit more confident in having the money talk, because sometimes it is quite daunting. And especially, look, if it's your first job, you don't want to strong arm people into paying you more, So I think just sort of having that industry information is something that's important, and you can have the conversation, and then having a baseline to say, I'm prepared to take, the lowest I'm prepared to take is X, and just having that for yourself and knowing, because you also don't want to be going to work and feeling like people are taking advantage of you. But it's really important to be mindful as you have that conversation.
Thank you so much, Thabiso, Tshepiso, the absolute superstars. There's so many comments. Please dive into the chat, interact with some of our attendees who are asking a lot of additional questions. But thank you so much, Thabiso. Thank you so much, Tshepiso, for sharing some of your insights, your thoughts, the things that you guys have experienced, having moved from university into the world of work. So in terms of our week 6 activities and reflections, right, remember to register on this Lotto platform if you would like to win some goods and participate in our challenge. Put together a short creative video about what you've learned on the topic of work readiness. Then share it with us. Could be a song, a poem, a rap, a dialogue. Keep it to a maximum of 3 minutes, and you could stand a chance to win 280 Zlato. Register and submit your video now. It is the last week for you to win some goodies. So get to recording this weekend. And of course, if you do win, this is where you can spend some of that Zlato. You can go to Specsavers, get yourself some new Zazas. You might want to go to Exclusive Books, buy a couple of books on finance, or you could go to Pick and Pay, you could go to Pep, you could buy some airtime, and of course you can take me on a date to KFC, because everybody knows I love streetwise too. So remember, please do register on the Zlato platform. There is the link. We will be sharing it with you via email as well, to submit your creative piece. So for resources, our previous webinar recordings, visit the L Plus Earn website, which is www.lplusearn.org.za. Check under 2022 webinars or under the news and events section. Thank you so much for joining the L Plus Earn Consumer Financial Education Program, Webinar 6. Our final one was on work readiness. Thank you so much to Tshepiso, to Thabiso, to the Asisa Foundation, and most importantly to you, the young people, the students, the attendees, for setting your Friday reminders and joining us. I truly hope that in these last few weeks, we've helped you to build a positive relationship with your money. I'm signing out. My name is DJ at Large.